What's up, everybody? I'm Tyler from Aspire Sports, and today I have a special guest with me, and I'm going to be doing a series here where I'm going to be inviting people on the show. We're going to talk fantasy football, best ball, all that kind of stuff as we're approaching the fantasy football season. So today, I have Josh Larkey, who's currently doing his own thing right now. He was over with FTN, also with Player Profile. You guys probably know who he is. One of the best minds of football, fantasy football, also maybe real life football, because you said you're interested in that stuff too. So let's go ahead, introduce him. So how you doing, Josh? Thank you so much for being a part of the show. It means a lot that you came on the show.
Thanks, Tyler. I was going to say, are we doing video recording too or just audio?
Oh, we're doing video too.
Oh, hell yeah. As you can see, so everyone out there, because you were looking at the camera and I was like, all right, are we doing video too? So it's good to be here. For everyone out here, I apologize for my setup. I'm rearranging and redoing everything during my downtime this month. There's going to be a light coming at me. There's going to be some football stuff in the background. It's going to look way better. So apologies to all you video viewers. It will get better.
It's the first one. This is we're getting back into the swing of things. Just like mini camp, you know, these guys are getting back into the swing of things. We're getting back in the swing of things with this. So no worries. So real quick, well, let's just go ahead and talk about some of the OTA news right now. And we're just going to briefly touch about this because, guys, don't be looking too much into it. So, like one of these, I saw Zeke's in the best shape of his life. You're going to see that about every single player. Travis Etienne's flying around out there. Saquon's starting to trust his knee. A couple things I do want to talk about. Number one, Michael Thomas, he's not going to be ready for minicamp. Now, minicamp is different than training camp. Training camp won't start until like mid-July. But we'll talk about that in one moment. Also, Terry McLaurin hasn't showed up. He doesn't plan to show up for minicamp. Hunter Renfrow, congratulations to him. Got a contract extension. Jameson Williams, unlikely to be ready for training camp. I mean, I don't think he's going to be ready for. Probably going to start the season on PUP. I would guess that's probably what's going to happen. So, out of that though, I do want to talk about as we get in. We're going to be talking a lot about best ball today. But Michael Thomas. How do you feel about, I don't know where he's going exactly in terms of best ball.
I want to say he's going like high 50s.
High 50s.
Last time I checked.
So how do you feel? I'll look up that right now as you talk. How do you feel about him in best ball? With this, I mean, it is early, but this is something that, you know, dating back to last year with the ankle injury. And I don't know if you follow the fantasy doctors. I really like them. They're obviously guys who work on pro athletes. They're really concerned about this ankle injury. So how do you approach that in terms of best ball? Is he somebody that you're going to be having a lot of exposure to, or somebody you're going to pass up on?
So with Michael Thomas, he is somebody where right now I am okay missing out on him. And I know that some people are like, oh, like, boy, what if the ADP is going to go up when he's healthy? And I agree. I think, let's say if for some reason Michael Thomas is fully healthy and he recovers and he's going to start week 1. His ADP last time I checked was around high 50s, maybe around pick 60. Where do we think it's going to go? Maybe mid 40s at best, probably.
Right.
It just seems to me like right now you're taking on so much risk for very little reward. If it's one of those things where it's like, all right, he's going at pick 60. If for some reason he starts week 1 healthy, the ADP shoots up to round 1 or round 2. Yeah, of course, I'm trying to get exposure now. But if you're telling me that he might go up a round, that just doesn't quite move the needle for me. I'm taking on so much risk right now. To me, I would rather say, hey, if for some reason it turns out he's going to miss the first month of the season, the ADP is going to drop further, and I'll just draft him there. And if for some reason he's ready, miraculously, he's going to play week 1, cool. I'll just eat that one round and say, you know what? I swung and I missed. To me, it just doesn't feel worth it, risk reward. So that's always the thought experiment I do is, all right, if for some reason he returns week 1, what do I think the ADP is going to be? And I just can't see it getting past those mid 40s. So why am I going to take on all that risk now in the 50s when we really have no information other than doctors out there are worried? Obviously, they don't really know if he's going to start week 1 or not, but it seems to me like in this situation, I'll just let somebody else take on that risk. There are other great picks that you can make in that range. I don't need Michael Thomas on very many of my best ball teams right now.
In mid 40s right now, If he were to climb up to mid 40s, you're looking at like a guy like Jeudy, Terry McLaurin, Allen Robinson. In terms of receivers, DK Metcalf. Currently, and like for me, I like Allen Robinson a lot. So that's the guy I'd be looking at. So let's go ahead and talk about some best ball. I've seen some people, the Podfather, say that you're the best ball player in the world. So let's. I want to know, what does Josh Larkey do? What's his strategy when it comes to drafting a best ball team? Now, I know I've seen you post on Twitter a bunch that you have so many different teams. So you probably has so many different strategies. But if you had to draft one team tomorrow and it was, against a bunch of different people, what would your strategy be for that one team?
Wow, if I had to draft one team. So for those out there that haven't seen my type of best ball portfolio, I draft hundreds and hundreds of teams over the summer. I think I drafted 650 or 700 teams last summer. So any 45-minute period I have, I am drafting, sometimes 2, 3, 4 drafts at once. If I could only draft one team, I would still try to stack. I love stacking, just kind of the basic idea behind stacking, where you want your quarterback and your receivers lined up on the same team, is that if you get the receiver right or you get the quarterback right, it's a very good chance that the other one was also the good pick. It's kind of like hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. If I take Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert, or Mike Williams and Justin Herbert smashes at ADP, probably the receiver I took is also smashing at ADP. Versus if I take, let's say that in round 3, I take Michael Pittman. And then in round 4, I take Justin Herbert. If Michael Pittman crushes, I have no idea what's going to happen to Justin Herbert. Right. Maybe he does really well. And then vice versa. If you told me that Justin Herbert throws 45 touchdowns this year, okay, well, Michael Pittman might catch 2. They are completely unrelated. Right. But if you told me that Justin Herbert throws 45 touchdowns, in what world is he doing that where Mike Williams catches 2?
Right.
So that's kind of the idea behind it. You're basically just placing one bet on the offense, and you don't have to worry about the player takes as much, because you know that if you get one, you get both. So I would definitely try and stack. I have a few teams I prefer stacking, but I'd probably look at like the Buccaneers, the Vikings, the Chargers. Those are some of the Chiefs. I like stacking teams where I know it's going to be a good offense and where I have a general idea of who the ball is going to. So that's always nice when you know, especially, the Vikings. If Kirk Cousins hits, there is literally a 0% chance that Justin Jefferson does not hit. So there's things like that where I'm like, let's try and minimize the bets I need to make. So I would definitely be stacking. And I would probably take, if I'm just doing one best ball entry, I'll be a little conservative. Probably go with one of those typical like 2-5-9-2 builds where you have 2 quarterbacks, 2 middle round quarterbacks, 5 running backs, usually 1 early, and then 4 in the mid to late rounds, kind of the hero RB that has just historically been a very strong strategy. 9 receivers, 3 to 4 early, 5 on the later end, and then probably 2 of those middle round tight ends. So there we go. Hopefully we're getting 2 stacks with the quarterbacks. I'm pretty confident that I can do that in some form in most drafts. So I feel like I couldn't get too specific in terms of who I'm exactly stacking, but those are some teams I'd be looking out for. And I'm pretty confident I can get something if I just one bullet. So
you're going to take the middle round quarterbacks, correct? Like in your ideal strategy, like like a Kyler or, Lamar, like these kind of guys that are going mid round.
Yeah, I'd probably look for 2 quarterbacks going between rounds Herbert, 5 to 10.
You said
or 4 to 10. That's generally what I'll look for. The win rates historically are very high. And it's because one thing that we're really good at as fantasy analysts, and even the general public's pretty good at this. We know which offenses will be good. Mm-hmm. It would shock you, right? If I told you Tom Brady was healthy and the Buccaneers were not a top 10 passing offense, you'd be shocked, right?
I'd be shocked. Or if Seattle's second next year, that would shock me.
If Seattle is not a bottom 5 passing offense, I will be shocked.
Right.
Genuinely. Same with like the Falcons. If the Falcons are not a bottom 5 pass offense, I'll be like, wow, good for them. Mariota or Ritter must have really had a surprisingly good year, because I expect them to be terrible.
Correct.
So we're pretty good at predicting offenses. Mm-hmm. So I think I feel like I just lost my train of thought. We were talking about
Mid-round
Oh,
quarterbacks.
Oh yeah. So anyway, Jesus. Wow.
No, you're good.
I'm just making sure to tank your opening episode. So with the middle round quarterbacks, the reason that that's such fertile ground is because we're good at predicting the offenses. So I like getting like Brady Cousins or Herbert Stafford. I like those combinations when possible because I know that these are going to be good offenses. It's pretty hard to imagine outside of injury that they're not good offenses. So that's kind of why
Stafford too. He's going. I was surprised at his ADP. Like he's going at.
He goes close to pick 100, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's going right now 93, 12th quarterback overall. I mean, I think that's for like you said. You're talking about stacking these offenses. We know that this Rams. I mean, we saw last year this Rams offense is so good. So I was shocked. I mean, he's going behind Dak Prescott, which I don't know. I'd rather have Stafford with his weapons, that offense, McVay, and everything. So surprising to me.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I think historically, 2 quarterbacks in those middle rounds does so well in best ball when you look at the win rates. And just intuitively, it adds up because you're like, yeah, if we're good at predicting offenses, I want 2 quarterbacks and good offenses. And sure, you could do less draft capital in your best ball team, and you could take 3 later round quarterbacks. But the problem is we're going to swing and miss a lot.
Right.
I mean, if we think about last year, a lot of these later round quarterbacks just didn't hit.
Right.
I mean, I guess a success would have been like Carson Wentz was a okay late round quarterback. He had his 27 passing touchdowns, but he had very few passing yards. The spike weeks weren't very good. And he had some pretty low weeks as well. And that's just what you're going to get, where even when you do a quote unquote hit, it's still not very good. And then like Daniel Jones, Sam Darnold, so many guys that people, the late round darlings from last year, they get injured or they're just ineffective when they start. Like Trevor Lawrence, there's just so many guys where you're taking on this risk with the late round guys. I just like to lock them up. And I kind of think of Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields right now feels like the firewall to me. Yeah. Where ideally I get 2 quarterbacks by that point. Since I think with Justin Fields, he's got the mobility. Kirk Cousins is just kind of a lock for the 30 passing touchdowns. After that, it starts to get shaky. We've got Lawrence, Tua. There's legitimate question marks about how good these guys will be in fantasy. Maybe they will be good, but I am significantly less confident once we hit that point.
I agree. And, for I know we're talking about best ball for redraft. I mean, I love going with that. Like I wait on quarterbacks for redraft. Like I just approach it, but like I love Fields and Cousins. Like those are my 2 guys that I'm going to attack aggressively just because of exactly what you said. I mean, you get that. Kirk Cousins always underrated. He's always a QB, like a back end QB1, 12th, which is great. And then you get that mobility with Fields, which maybe improves a lot this year, but we don't think this offense is going to be very good. But you never know. So let's go ahead and talk about. So you talked about some of your best offenses. What about who would you say is your top 3? You said Tampa Bay. Who were your other ones? Tampa Bay.
So I wrote down 3 actual QB receiver stacks. That's how I was interpreting it. We've already talked about some of the offenses I like. So I'll just discuss 3 that I have a lot of, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
One of them is Brady Evans. There's no more Antonio Brown. Chris Godwin's going to miss probably half or more of the season because he's recovering from the ACL tear. I don't think there's any world where Brady hits and Evans doesn't, or Evans hits and Brady doesn't. So I just like that one. You're playing against 11 other teams in best ball. Do I think there is a much better than 1 in 12 chance that Brady and Evans hit and they hit together? Yes. That's a great one. Evans round 2, Brady round 6 or round 7, money in the bank, just a ton of touchdowns, just tons of pass volume. Brady threw 719 times last year, by far the most in the NFL. I like that a lot. The other one, Cousins Jefferson, kind of hinted at it. Don't think there's any world where one of them hits and the other doesn't. They have the new head coach. He was the former Rams offensive coordinator, Kevin O'Connell. He was actually a quarterback himself back in the day. Seems to me like, if anything, the guy's going to be kind of pass friendly. I like that a lot, especially for the 2 of them. And then the third one, this is an interesting one because I actually think Mahomes is totally mispriced. I do not think he should be going as the QB2, QB3 off the board. I think in general, you don't really want Mahomes. However, I like the Mahomes-Kelsey stack because if for some reason Mahomes hits, I don't think there's any world where Kelsey doesn't hit.
No.
And I like Kelsey a decent bit myself, just as a singular asset. So I think that's a nice stack where, sure, I think all else equal, Mahomes probably shouldn't be going where he is. He should go one round, maybe round and a half later than he currently does. But if I'm taking Mahomes, or if I take Kelsey at the end of round one, I am often targeting Mahomes then at the 3-4 turn. And that's just a nice place to get him. Take Kelsey at like pick 10. You get Mahomes at, I don't want to do math right now. I think that would be pick 34.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
that sounds
right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, pick 10, then pick 34. So that just feels like money in the bank where if Kelsey hits, Mahomes hits, and vice versa. So those are three where it's very hard for me to see them not being fully intertwined.
Yeah. No, I like it. The good offense target, and like you said, I mean, I agree with every single one of them. It will be interesting to see how Patrick Mahomes does this year without Tyreek Hill, how big, that loss is going to be, but it's still Patrick Mahomes, but we'll see. But let's go ahead and move on to the next segment where we're going to talk about, would you rather? Would you rather this player or this player? These are two guys that are really close in terms of ADP. And for this one, we're going to talk about, we'll talk about redraft for this one because we've been talking about best ball, so we'll talk about redraft. I don't know if that is any. Well, actually, let me ask you this one last question. I did want to ask this question. So for stacking, now, do you stack in your redraft leagues as well? Do you think stacking is just as important, maybe not as important for redraft? How do you approach stacking for your redraft league?
When possible, I stack and redraft as well. I don't think there's any format where it's really hurting you. Just because anytime you're in these 12-team leagues, you're losing 11 times out of 12 if you're an average player. So it's not like we need to thread the needle and just be so unbelievably incredible with all of our picks. No, I don't want to have to worry about that. Do I really want to thread the needle and get every single pick right in order to beat 11 other owners? Or do I just want to say, hey, this offense is really good? And I think they're a top 10 offense. And if they happen to be a top 3 offense, I'm probably winning my league. Think about if you took Cousins, Jefferson last year or Stafford, Cup last year, there were so many combinations where Brady, Evans, where you just had a massive advantage over everybody else. Herbert, Mike Williams. So for me, I'm stacking a redraft as well.
Sounds good. I like it. All right, so let's move on to the next segment, the Would You Rather. And we got two guys here, which I think is a little interesting, but I mean, it kind of alludes to what you were saying earlier. We know which offense are going to be really good. So the first one, we have Mike Williams, who's currently being drafted as wide receiver 13. Now, I'm just looking at best ball, your underdog ADP right now, because it's just the most accurate with everybody doing the drafts there. So we have Mike Williams, wide receiver 13, or Michael Pittman, wide receiver 14. Now, I'm assuming I have a sense of who you're going to take because you're stacking. So go ahead and answer that question. Which one would you rather have?
So I actually like both. And I'll explain the case for each and kind of how I think I would structure it. So Mike Williams, higher ceiling. I just always love targeting the guys that I know are on very, very good offenses. Mike Williams in his first year in the new high volume role, the average depth of target came down, the target share went way up, and the fantasy points went way, way, way up. I think for best ball, I'm going to lean Mike Williams. Okay. I think he's just going to give you some spike weeks that Pittman probably can't just because of that Chargers offense.
Yeah.
I think Pittman has a much lower chance of giving you a 150-yard, 2-touchdown performance than someone like a Mike Williams. I think the highs are going to be higher with Williams. Traditional redraft, I might lean Pittman. I think he's going to give you a higher floor week to week, probably similar fantasy points per game. Williams feels like more the type that could really win you a week for best ball. Pittman just a little bit more consistent. And I think I would just probably lean that security. I think people make too big a deal about better and best ball or, oh, it's not consistent enough. But I think with how different these guys project to be, I'd probably tiny edge to Pittman redraft, tiny edge to Williams best ball. But really, you could go either. And if you think that you're going to be able to get Herbert the round after, then I would lean Williams. But if for some reason you don't want Herbert or something like that, then sure, take Pittman. But I think they're really neck and neck. These are both guys I've been targeting.
I like that because, I mean, for me, especially like once again alluding back to what I said earlier, but for redraft, I do like to wait on the quarterback position, get like Kirk Cousins. So I'd probably do that. I agree with you though. Mike Williams, just those spike weeks, especially for best ball. I mean, you're looking at, a week where he could score a couple weeks, those 30 points, and then, have some low lows. But I agree. Now, how do you feel about this one? We got these two wide receivers. Now, you might have a pending suspension for a game or two. For Jerry Jeudy, who's currently being drafted now, I didn't look today. This was just a couple days ago. But Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver 20. And now it seems that Courtland Sutton has jumped him, where he's going as wide receiver 18. So which one of these two wide receivers would you rather have for fantasy football?
Oh, this is tough. So underdog is half PPR. I think half PPR, I'd probably give the edge to Sutton if they're going in the same range. I think Jeudy probably has a touch higher target share, probably. And he's probably going to work a little closer to the line of scrimmage. So he might be a slightly better PPR option. Sutton a better half PPR best ball option. More the deep threat. He's always had a really, really high depth of target. And he's huge. It's like 6'4", 215. He's a prototypical red zone threat. Mm-hmm. So I think I would just lean Sutton in general. He's done it before. He had that 1,100 yard season with Drew Lock 3 years ago. Last year was obviously a down year for him. It was a down year for Jeudy as well. Neither played well. It makes sense for both. Jeudy had the high ankle sprain early in the season. Hard to come back from that during that year. And then Sutton was the year removed from the ACL.
Yeah.
So obviously we should expect struggles from him as well. So they both recovered from their injuries. Going to give the slight edge to Sutton just because of two reasons. One, he's done it before. He had the 1,100 yard season. So we know he can do it again. And in terms of Russell Wilson, it feels like a better skill match.
Yeah.
What is the knock on Russell Wilson? It's that he doesn't throw between the hash marks. He loves the deep ball. He loves throwing to the sideline. Because he is a shorter quarterback, he's pretty mobile. He just historically hasn't targeted between the hashes as often in the middle of the field. That is where I expect Jeudy to live. So while I think Jeudy probably out-targets him based on his archetype of receiver, it does not feel like the correct skill set match. And if they're going close, I'm going to give that slight edge to Courtland Sutton.
I like it. Now, this next one, we got a darling here who's going to, I feel like as we get closer and closer to really draft time, August, and especially if we don't see Jimmy G come back, like he's going to just fly up the boards here. We got Trey Lance, who's currently going as QB 11, and then Matthew Stafford, who's currently going as QB 12. Which one are you taking, and what's your reasoning behind it?
So I'm going to lean Trey Lance. I've got
it.
a question for you, Tyler.
Yeah.
I tell you, one of these guys finishes as the overall QB1 in fantasy. Who would you guess it was?
I would probably say, honestly, Trey Lance.
I don't think Stafford cannot finish as the QB1.
No, I
don't think there's any
have
world.
to throw like
60 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's going to have to be 50 plus touchdowns for him to do it. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have, and I mean, he already had a really great season last year. Like, do you think it's going to get even better as you head into year two? Which, I mean, he does have Allen Robinson, which I think is solid, but I don't look at the situation and say, wow, it's going to be even better next season. Like, I think it's going to probably be about the same. Which he finished, what, points per game, 10th? It's somewhere around there.
Stafford was the QB 11 points per game, and he had 41 passing touchdowns.
Yes. Yeah.
And, like, there's no, I mean, I think he's going to be a fine pick in fantasy. I think he's got a good floor. But I don't think he has,
player for where he's currently going.
He does not have a league-winning ceiling. We just saw him throw for over 40 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the QB 11. That is not winning you a fantasy league.
Mm-mm.
We're going to need a really high touchdown rate once again. And also, if you want to know what the ceiling is for this type, whatever Tom Brady did last year, it is lower. Because Tom Brady, I think he was a QB 3 per game, which is great. Borderline league-winning player at that position. Tom Brady threw the ball 719 times. That is not the Rams' MO.
No.
The Rams are a lot more run-pass balanced offense, and they're not going to play quite as quickly as the Buccaneers. They're not going to be as pass-heavy. So whatever Brady's ceiling was from last year, drop that down a few notches, and that is Stafford's ceiling. Trey Lance, on the other hand, could finish as the QB1. Think about Lamar Jackson's 2019. He had the most fantasy points for a quarterback ever. He had over 28 fantasy points, and it's because he ran. He had over 1,000 rushing yards. He had a really high pass touchdown rate. Even though he only threw, I think, like 35 passing touchdowns, it didn't matter because when you're punching in 7-8 touchdowns on the ground and running for 1,000 yards on the ground, that is just such an advantage over what everyone else can do. And
Jalen Hurts,
we have seen, so Jalen Hurts was the QB6 last year.
QB6, yeah.
And he had way worse weapons, a way worse offensive scheme than what Lance walks into. Lance is going to be really, really good in fantasy football. He might be terrible in real football, but one thing we've also seen Jimmy Garoppolo, I think we can agree is bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
I assume that
Yeah.
you don't think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
No,
You wouldn't say he's the best, right? Just want to
No.
make sure.
I
Would it
would not
shock
say
you if
that.
so? But would it shock you then if I said that Jimmy Garoppolo has actually had the most yards per attempt over the last few years of any quarterback in the NFL?
Really, that would shock me.
It is the Shanahan system. Jimmy Garoppolo is consistently 8.5 yards per attempt in the NFL. That is the highest out there.
That is pretty crazy.
And he's not even good. And it is because there's play action. They have a good run game. Shanahan is a creative play caller, and they have yards after the catch monsters with Tebow, Ayuk, Kittle. Lance is in a great situation. And I think he has legitimate QB1 overall upside, just the exact same path that Lamar Jackson went down in 2019. I mean, Lance, if anything, has actually a better situation. Sure, he's a little bit worse as a runner than Lamar, but the overall offensive system and the weapons are significantly better. We could see 25, 26 fantasy points a game from Lance. Would not shock me. My favorite Lance stat, his first start last year ever, his first career start, he had more rushing attempts, 16, than completions, 15. If that doesn't get you excited for fantasy football, then I don't know what will.
Right. No, and I mean that's the thing. I mean, I was looking at something. Obviously, I'm not as analytical as you, but I was looking at something. I went back to like 2014, 2013, and looked at all the quarterbacks, and like what you see is when quarterbacks have like over 80, I think it was 80 rushing attempts, like it was about 80-90% of them are finishing as top 6 quarterbacks in terms of points per game. So like I think it's very safe to say, after what you said, Trey Lance, I believe 2 starts, he had over 20 rushing attempts in those 2 starts. I think it was around 24 or something. So I think it's safe to say that you're going to see Trey Lance probably have, I would say, like, plays a full season, at least 90 to 100 rushing attempts this upcoming season.
Oh, more than that. Because I think he's going to have at least like 130.
Yeah, honestly. So you're talking about a guy that, once again, it's very, very realistic, I think, in my opinion, that he finishes similar to what Jalen Hurts had last season as a top 6 quarterback in points per game this upcoming season. I wouldn't be shocked. Like you said, if he was quarterback 1, I mean, I really don't think it's that unrealistic that happened. I feel like as long as he plays a full season, his weapons are healthy, he's healthy, he's probably going to finish as a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. I would not be shocked at that. For a guy that you're getting later. And once again, it's Jalen Hurts. That's what I keep telling everybody. There's a lot of people that I like to compare this upcoming season. And him, for me, this upcoming season is Jalen Hurts of last year. So draft Trey Lance. Do yourself a favor. All right. And let's go ahead into the last segment here. We're going to talk about your guys, who are some of your guys, a couple of guys that you have a lot of exposure to already, that you think even as we head into all the part-timers, the casuals coming back and get into the pre-draft process, and even if they fly up the draft board, who are some guys that you still see taking in your drafts?
So I've already mentioned a lot of guys I like. I will not repeat any names. We'll just talk about a few guys we haven't mentioned yet. I'm going to go rapid fire. Russell Gage. We've already talked about this Buccaneers offense. They're going to throw the ball over 700 times. Chris Godwin is probably going to miss at least half the season, maybe more. He tore, I think, his ACL, MCL, something else maybe. At the end of last season, he's out for a long time. I've heard he's targeting Thanksgiving, potentially. That is terrifying. Russell Gage had a 22% target share last year on the Falcons, and he was personally handpicked by Tom Brady. Handpicked. Tom Brady called him up and said, I want you to be a Buccaneer. We've been in the same division, the NFC South, for the past 2 years. I've been watching you for 4 games. I like what I see. I want you on this roster. Russell Gage is like basically like budget Chris Godwin in terms of his ADP.
Especially
he's basically going to play that role.
We haven't talked about this. I will say this real quick too. We haven't talked about Dynasty. I think he's a great person to go and try to target in Dynasty because I don't think he's going to cost much. And especially if you're a team that you think, has a pretty decent shot of winning it this year, he would be somebody I would try to go and get on my Dynasty roster for that reason, where I think that there's a legitimate chance, as long as Chris Godwin's out, he could be like a wide receiver too throughout those weeks.
100%.
So I think he's a great guy to target in terms of Dynasty leagues.
So Russell Gage. Another one is Travis Etienne. He looks like this year's DeAndre Swift, where it's like, can he do it? How many touches will he get? Well, we know he's a pass catcher on a bad offense with an elite college profile. I like to buy into those guys. He's got first-round draft capital. The guy's going to be on the field.
Whoa. But
He's
James
one of-
Robinson.
Yeah, James Robinson is Achilles. Do people not realize Travis Etienne had back-to-back seasons of over 1,600 rushing yards in college? Do they not know that he played 3 seasons with Trevor Lawrence? He had over 1,000 receiving yards in his final 2 seasons in college with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence gives him the best of both worlds. Trevor Lawrence is mobile. Mobile quarterbacks freeze linebackers, and they open up wider running lanes for someone like Travis Etienne. But what's the issue with the mobile quarterback? Ooh, they do not check the ball down. Because we see Lamar Jackson. Does he throw to running backs? No. Why would you throw to the running back for 6 yards when you can scramble for 8?
Mm-hmm.
But that is where Trevor Lawrence is different.
Yes.
Even though Trevor Lawrence was highly mobile last year and in college. Like I said before, Travis Etienne, he had over 1,000 receiving yards combined in his last 2 years in college. He had nearly 600 receiving yards in his senior year. Trevor Lawrence, for some reason, likes to target Travis Etienne.
Mm-hmm.
You want to buy in on the guy that's going to get the goal line work, that's going to get the pass work in a bad offense. With a bad defense, they're going to be trailing. Oh, Etienne's going to be force-fed those targets. I am excited about him.
I love it.
T. Higgins, the wide receiver 2 in depth chart only. He's going to perform like a wide receiver 1 in fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
He actually outproduced Jamar Chase in fantasy points in the second half of last season once he was recovered from his shoulder injury. And yes, that is including the week 17 eruption from Chase, where he had 11 receptions, 266 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Even if you include that game, second half of last year, more fantasy points per game for T. Higgins. I think he's going to be nearly as good as Chase. It makes sense. Yeah, I would draft Chase before him. But T. Higgins is an excellent round 2 pick in fantasy. When people go, ooh, he's the wide receiver 2, you can't draft that guy in round 2. Well, he's going to outscore pretty much every single team's wide receiver 2 and most of their wide receiver 1s as well. You want T. Higgins. Right. You want to invest in that offense. Kadarius Toney. A lot of people, they do not like Kadarius Toney.
You talk about him a lot.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he's got these injuries. They might trade him. Do you want to know what I like about Kadarius Toney? He had the 7th highest targets per route run rate in the NFL, which means that per route run, he was getting targeted higher than all but 6 players in the NFL last season. That is absolutely elite. The team was force feeding him targets. What was the one question mark about Toney coming into the NFL? Could he get open in the NFL? Mm-hmm. He didn't have the great college production profile. All we knew was if the ball is in his hands, he is one of the 2 or 3 best players in the NFL. Mm-hmm. We knew that from day one. You wouldn't be able to tackle him, but could we get the ball in his hands? The answer was a resounding yes. He goes in the 90s, sometimes even in the hundreds with ADP. I've gotten him in as late as like pick 112. Mm-hmm. He is the latest wide receiver you can draft with legitimate top 12 upside. I do not say that lightly. Kadarius Toney could finish as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football.
Right.
You want Kadarius Toney on your team. It just blows me away how much disrespect he's getting when the peripherals were just truly elite. Another guy. We're gonna change pace. We're gonna talk about some running backs. So mid to late rounds, Rachaad White. Mm-hmm. He's on the Buccaneers, the offense we already like. Mm-hmm. Over 1,000 rushing yards as a senior, almost 500 receiving yards as well as a senior. He frequently lined up wide in the formation at Arizona State. Mm-hmm. He's a very, very good pass catcher. In fact, by far the best in this class. Leonard Fournette has
James Cook. What about James Cook?
James Cook is not the pass catcher.
Everybody talks about James Cook, though.
Yeah, blows me away. You can pull up the stats, everyone. Pull up the stats, pull up the yards per reception. What you will see is that Rachaad White is just better. He was deployed on the outside more often as a legitimate receiving weapon. He plays on the Buccaneers, and Leonard Fournette has never made it through a full season healthy. Mm-hmm. So especially redraft, oh, baby.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Just stash Rachaad White, and it's basically free money because you know that he's going to be starting games. And I would say that anytime he starts for the Buccaneers, he will be a top 3 weekly option.
Love it. I love him.
Similar mold, Isaiah Spiller. We like targeting these backups on really good offenses. Mm-hmm. Love the Chargers offense. He might have standalone value, a la A.J. Dillon. Mm-hmm. We know Austin Eckler is not a 250, 300 touch kind of running back. That is not his ideal workload. Love Isaiah Spiller. They've been wanting to get someone as a complement to Eckler. Spiller was a 3-year starter in the SEC. Mm-hmm. Came out early. And that's the type of profile that I want on the good offense. And then finally, the super late round running back, Tyrion Davis-Price of the 49ers.
I like it.
Understand that a 3rd round running back in the Niners last year, Trey Sermon, burned you.
Everybody brings it up.
You're listening right now. If you're listening, you took him round 7 and he was an absolute freaking bust. But then how come you were burned so badly? You decided instead of being a little bit more cautious. We're just going to fade that guy altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get Tyrion Davis-Price in like the 15th, 16th round oftentimes. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You were okay taking Trey Sermon in round 7. Tyrion Davis-Price is way
Right.
faster than Sermon. He
Yeah.
is actually fit. He has played in the zone run blocking scheme. Trey Sermon was like a glorified fullback last year. This is not someone to worry about for touch competition.
Mm-hmm.
You want Tyrion Davis-Price because it's essentially arbitrage on the people that got burned by Trey Sermon.
Yes. I agree with that too, because the other thing, I mean, Elijah Mitchell, he did miss 6 games last year. He was banged up. And for another reason that you said earlier in the segment, that he was getting a ton of work, and he's not that big of a guy. I mean, he's 205. He's a bit smaller. So what if, once again, he misses a few games? I think that Tyrion Davis-Price, in my eyes, would be the next man up for a team that we've already talked about, loves to run the football. They're very running back friendly. So, and obviously, once again, we haven't talked about it a whole lot, but for Dynasty too, like, he's a guy that I really liked for Dynasty. I thought he was going, decently late there too. Yeah, this draft class is a bit weak, but the situation's pretty good for him. Much better than, a guy I just mentioned. Both these guys, we talked about Rachaad White and Tyrion Davis-Price. I mean, I love them a lot more than I love, in my opinion, James Cook. I mean, I like them a hell of a lot more than James Cook. These are guys that I think could be every down backs if something happens to their guy. Have that body, have the speed, everything that you want from these guys. So, other than, I don't think he'd be like a 3 down back in San Francisco, but still, you would get the all the rushing attempts, red zone work. So I like those a lot. I agree with basically every single one you said. I don't know if I can get with Kadarius Toney, but we'll see. Somebody has to catch the ball there. What do you feel about Kenny Golladay then? Do you like where he's going? How do you feel about him?
They're all going really late. I think Golladay is fine. The thing is, Galladay's never been a super high target share kind of person. Sterling Shepard has commanded targets at a really good rate throughout his career, but he's coming off the Achilles. Who knows when he plays again?
Did he get cut? He didn't get cut? I thought he got cut.
If he got cut, that is news to me. But I'm not expecting him to begin the season healthy. I think he's going to miss 4 to 6 games at least. And then we got Wan'Dale Robinson, who has an interesting profile, but he's a rookie. And I would rather just take the sure thing with Kadarius Toney, who already during his rookie season showed that he could command targets at a higher rate than every other rookie and nearly every other receiver in the NFL. So I know that Kadarius Toney has a terrifying floor just because maybe the team doesn't like him, and it's the Giants. However, especially in redraft, if I'm picking a guy at round 9, he shouldn't start.
Yeah.
What you want to do in that range, the way to think about it, you want to pick guys that you can realistically visualize kicking a guy out of your starting lineup and inserting him in.
Mm-hmm.
Kadarius Toney's a type where, we saw him with a 200-yard game last year.
Mm-hmm.
We saw him just commanding targets left and right.
Against
if
Dallas,
there is a player
a beast.
that could, if there is a player in that kind of range where you look up and you're like, wow, this guy's giving you 8, 9, 10 targets every single game, and I took him in the 90s, it's Kadarius Toney. And that's why I like him. Is they might not be super high value per target, but especially in PPR formats, he could just be absolutely peppered by Daniel Jones.
So Kadarius Toney or Alan Lazard, it's wide receiver 45 and 46 right there.
I'm taking
definitely Toney 10 times out of 10. Well,
I wouldn't take him 10 times out of 10 because, like we talked about earlier, I get player takes wrong, as do all of us. I'm much better at offenses and predicting the good passing offenses. I don't think either passing offense will be very good. I think the Packers are probably better, but we have not seen a single. There's no metric out there that you can point to with Alan Lazard and go, wow, this guy looks like he's just going to step right into high volume and command it. Mm-hmm. There is nothing out there that makes me believe that he is anything more than a complimentary receiver. Maybe he is a true outlier and takes a massive step forward. Rather than betting on the outlier, I'd rather just say, hey, Kadarius Toney just did it as a rookie. So he, for me, very much the preferred pick.
All right. I like it. Well, that concludes everything. And you know what, Josh, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been fun talking fantasy football. You have to come on later, once we get things, once I get, back into the groove of things. You'll have to come back on. We'll talk again as we get closer to draft time. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and best of luck in the future with whatever holds for you Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it being on here. This was good. No, I mean, nothing better than talking some fantasy football on a Monday.
No,
all right.
Could talk about this, for hours every single day. This is what I love to do. As clearly what you love to do as well. So, well, and if you guys haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check out Josh on his social medias. What's your I would say Twitter probably is that your one that you use the most?
Yeah, I use Twitter the most. Jay Larky tweets. I also use TikTok. Jay Larky TikToks. JLARKY. So Jay Larky tweets. Jay Larky TikToks. Pretty easy. Check me out there. That is where you'll see all my work and where you'll figure out where I am working beginning July 1st.
Big day for you. So, all right. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.